I don't really edit the episodes much, though. I've had a lot of tech issues.
Oh, okay.
So, like, we're recording right now. So, the people
Mm-hmm.
listening to this, sorry for last week with any tech issues and where it sounded like I was talking over Sarah. I didn't mean to be because I couldn't hear her and there was all kinds of weird shit going on. So, hopefully that won't happen this time. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Transcending Humanity. This is episode 48. Holy shit. This is episode 48. I'm Vanessa Joy, aka Venestradiol, your hostess with the sum of its istis and stuff. I want to do a little trigger warning on this one, or content warning, or whatever. We're going to be talking about some pretty deep stuff, getting into death and suicide, stuff like that, because my lovely guest here, hopefully if I'm pointing this way in the final edit, it'll be pointing at her and not the other way. So my lovely guest is Nikki the Death Doula. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of death talk. Nikki runs a podcast called Good Grief. I was a guest on it last week. Well, it aired last week, and that was if you really want to hear about all the bullshit that I've dealt with my family, and how it's not necessarily a bad thing to not be upset when a parent dies. Check out her podcast. You should be checking it out anyways, because she's Nikki and she's badass. Just a reminder, the views and opinions of myself, Nikki, and anyone else that happens to pop up in the show are their own and not their respective organizations, this, that, or the other. Though obviously I speak on behalf of Transcending Humanity. I would like to, remind everybody, Patreon, subscribe, that kind of stuff. Thank you to my buddy bears and above. And our merch shop is still there. And I'm thinking about making a Kamala shirt, where I was going to say something like, it's time for a woman to show America what great truly is. I think we need that. So anyways, enough of me yammering on. This is a show. We're already a couple minutes in. People are like, what the fuck is going on here? I would love to introduce Nikki Smith, the Death Doula. Actually, I will have her introduce herself. Nikki, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm Nikki. Nikki Smith. I'm a death doula and a grief coach. I'm located in Columbus, Ohio, and I help the dying and their loved ones navigate the end of life journey. So,
I mean, because there's doulas for birth, so why shouldn't there be one for end of life?
Absolutely agree.
Because honestly, the two events in our lives are pretty similar in a lot of ways.
They are. Dying is very much a labor. It very much is a labor. And there's a lot involved in dying. So, yeah.
How did you get into becoming a death doula?
So I had heard about death doulas on a YouTube podcast episode years ago. And I just thought that sounded like such a cool thing. I'd worked in nursing homes, volunteered at hospice, and I was like, oh, that's like a thing. That's like a thing people can do. That's so cool. And immediately became obsessed. I was finding everything I could find, which at that time there wasn't a lot. The death doula movement hasn't been around super long, just since like 2000 and like late aughts, late early 2000s, I guess you could say. But everything I could find, I was reading up on. I just thought it was super cool. And it was always in the back of my brain, but I had a very nice, cushy full-time job in IT at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'd never actually do that though. Flash forward to COVID, and like everybody else, I was still thankfully employed, but I was at home with nothing to do but reevaluate my entire life on this planet.
I think a lot of us can relate.
Right? I think a lot of people made big life changes during COVID. So
I came out.
Yeah, see?
Actually, it's after that, but
I can't say I did that, but I definitely decided to shake things up in my life. And I started training to be a death doula. I went through the International End of Life Doula Association, and day one of training, first day down, and I just knew this is what I meant to do. So finished up the training, started my certification process, and during all that, I opened my LLC, started seeing clients, and here I am.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It has to be so rewarding too. How do you How do you cope with so much death though? Like, are you able to step aside a little bit? Do you like try not to work with family members or someone that you're too close with? Or
yeah, I've always said I would not be a doula to a family member, mostly because, I mean, part of the reason I'm coming into the space with families is so that the children or the loved ones surrounding the dying person, I can talk today, surrounding the dying person can just be there in whatever that capacity is, their daughter, their spouse, their loved one, whatever that is, they can just be there in that capacity and not do all the crap, so to speak. So, when it comes down to when my parents get to their end of life, I would rather be there as their daughter than their doula.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. So, I like I said, I wouldn't do anybody too close to me. I did serve as a doula for a very close friend, and I don't regret it. I was so happy I was there and able to help, and they were very grateful for me as well. But that one was a lot harder on me. It took a while.
Imagine.
It's, when she died, I wasn't present at the time, but her daughter texted me and said she's gone now, and I didn't know how to process that. Like, do I process this as a friend, as the doula? And it was very confusing for me. So I wouldn't do that again. But also when I'm working with somebody, I'm in work mode, if that makes sense. I know my work is different than, typing away at a computer, but much like a therapist is not going to be taking on their clients' problems too hard, and they're in therapist mode. I'm in doula mode when I'm working. That's not to say I don't care and I don't feel a lot of feelings for my clients, because I do. I grow to love them because I'm working with them in their most intimate and vulnerable moments. But I'm also able to just kind of take that, hold space. When I leave after working with a client, I'll take some time alone in my car and just feel the feelings, hold their grief, hold their sadness, and whatever their thoughts and feelings were that day. And then I just kind of pack them away in a little box and put it up on my mental shelf and leave it there until the next time I need to get it down. That's
smart. You have to do anything that you can do to survive with those kinds of heavy things that you're dealing with. And I mean, you see a lot of professions work with that too, though, like doctors, nurses, hospital staff. As you said, therapists, stuff like that. So you train yourself to step back a little bit, but.
And it's like anything, the more you do it, I don't want to say the easier it gets. Death is always hard, right? And it's never going to get easier. But the more you do it, the more you practice anything, the better you get at it. So it's a little easier for me to compartmentalize and, put those feelings away when I need to.
Very true. Very true. Makes sense. So when my brain just stopped working. That happens a lot. Anyone that listens to this show is like, Vanessa's brain stops working a lot.
I do that on mine too.
Well, we have like 2 neurons left, after all the stress. So
right.
So you work both with the person who is in the process of passing and their families.
Oh yeah.
Who usually hires you? Is it usually a family that hires you, or is it something that's in like a living will, or?
So far, everybody that has hired me has been a family member of the dying person. I have had people with diagnoses that have reached out to me just to ask questions or, get a little guidance, but I haven't really worked with them in a full scope as a doula. But so far, and that's just the way it's worked out, I don't know how normal that is with other doulas, but so far, everybody that's hired me has been a family member. Their person has been on board. I would never work with somebody who doesn't want me there. So that's the first question I ask is, do they know you're reaching out to me, and are they okay with working with me? And if they say no and no, then I'm going to say that I can't help you. So I'm not going to force myself on anybody that doesn't want my services.
No, you see that so often too, especially with elderly abuse and stuff like that, where they just they start talking about these people like they're just things, and forgotten, and it's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. There's so many people that are just fully alone. I think you mentioned when you're interviewing me, like during the AIDS crisis, where there were people that like were dying alone because doctors, nurses, no one wanted to go near them. And the heartbreak of that, like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. There would be so many people dying in hospitals, and when it was so new and stigmatized, there would be nurses that would refuse to touch them, and you have to physically touch people as a nurse, like, or they would just make it so limited. And I mean, sure, when you're in the hospital, you got, one nurse for, however many people, so they can't spend all day with you, but they'll at least hold your hand and talk to you for a minute. But all these people dying of AIDS were like, the nurses would come in and like barely touch them. The doctors would stand at the other end of the room and talk at them and then leave without ever touching them. And like knowing what we know now, we know that's horrendous. It was horrendous at the time, but I'm hoping now we're a little more compassionate. And that now that we know how this is transmitted, that doctors and nurses are being a little nicer about this.
We can only hope.
I mean, not all of them, but
yeah. You said, like, death doula in modern culture is kind of a newer thing, but I would imagine has a long history back through the years. Have you done research on the history of it?
So there isn't much like specific. So, okay, to go way back, the word doula is from the ancient Greek word doule, which is female maidservant. It's also translated as female slave, but I prefer maidservant.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So, so doulas have been around in some capacity or another since ancient Greek times, and most of them were there for births. But there's been references here and there of doulas or, doulae working with people at different times in their life. Sometimes just helping out with a wedding or helping out with, sex. So it's just kind of assumed that they probably were helping people with dying as well. And in other cultures, there are people that are death walkers, that do basically what we're doing. So a death doula is not a brand new thing, but a death doula as we know it right now, the trainings that are out there, the certifications that are out there are all newish. So somebody just finally made a label for it, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, like, it's probably just like absorbing techniques just built up through the years. But I like your point with doulas having been with other major events like weddings, sex, and stuff like that. A doula is a guide, really. Someone to give you some direction, be it starting your life, middle of your life, major things. And I love that. Honestly, before I met you, I didn't even know death doulas were a thing. So
now
I
guess
know. I can thank Becky and her podcast collective for that. So thanks, Becky. Maybe I should run one of her ads on this episode. Yeah, I should probably do that. So right here.
Put it right here.
If I remember. I need to put like a gap or something. So like...
The journey towards liberation is #MessyAF. And honestly, we're here for it. Hi, I'm Taina Brown, a feminist life coach.
And I'm Becky Mollenkamp, a feminist business coach, and we're your hosts for Messy Liberation.
Join us for conversations about current events, politics, pop culture, and of course, business, always with our eye on liberation from oppressive systems.
If you're like us and want to create a more equitable world, subscribe to Messy Liberation, available wherever you listen to podcasts, including the biggies, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
Okay, there's an audio gap. Hopefully I'll find that. If there isn't an ad inserted right here, you'll know that Vanessa's just a flake because I am. So, when it comes to death and dying, as you know, this show's fairly queer focused. It's not like as trans focused as it used to be, but it's run by a trans person, and most of my co-hosts are queer in one way, shape, or form. One thing that our community struggles with a lot is, we're past 10 minutes in, so this might eventually get monetized. Suicide. This goes on YouTube and all the algorithms and bullshit. But it's something that is effective life for us. I myself had a incident back in April, and throughout my life, I've had suicidal ideation. It's only been since I'm finally on the correct medication and have my ADHD under control and have my hormones in check that I haven't had a suicidal thought in months, which is mind-blowing for me because usually it's every day. Yeah. So those in the queer community, those not in the queer community, just if you have those thoughts all the time, know that it is normal. And a lot of other people feel those too, but you still need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So getting back to my point, suicide is a very common thing in the queer community, especially in the trans community, especially in the trans youth. And people find themselves suddenly missing a family member, in some cases out of nowhere, because they might not know how much that person was struggling. And suicide's one of those tricky things in that someone could seem completely fine and the next day they're gone. Yeah, a lot of times it's people that don't feel heard or they are being oppressed in one way, shape, or another. So for family and friends of the queer community, what advice would you have, especially if they didn't necessarily know that the person that took their life was queer in one way, shape, or form? What advice do you have for unpacking that? I know that's a deep question.
I know that is a deep question. So, and there's that's a lot. There's a lot to unpack with that one. But
sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a great question because I get asked questions like this a lot. And so even just a step back, if you've lost somebody in your life to suicide, there's a lot of cases where you'll hear, I had no idea they were depressed. I had no idea anything was wrong. Or they might say, I had no idea they were queer. And first of all, it's easy to sit back and say, I should have known. No, you probably didn't for a reason. I've had a long history of suicidal ideation myself. And that's one of those things I don't talk about because there's stigma. We all know there's stigma around suicide. And there's stigma around feeling it. There's stigma around the act. There's stigma around the family members that should have known. And it's stupid and unfounded. And that's why nobody's talking about it. So you probably didn't know. You probably had no idea because they were scared. They were scared to ask for help. They were scared to let it be known that they weren't well. And when it comes to the queer community, there's a lot of stigma with that too, unfortunately. It pisses me off. I wish there wasn't, but there is. There's just too many people that are, ostracized by their family members, ostracized by their friends, and find themselves completely alone and or worse yet, abused, hurt, attacked, whatever, because of their queer identification might be. And there's so much stigma with that they're terrified to talk about it. So they just see people around them being abused, hurt, or, looked down on, whatever. And they say, I can't live that way. And they might take their own life. And there's nothing, if it's done, it's done, right? We can't change the past. I wish we could, but we can't change that. The number one thing you can do is if somebody in your life has taken their own life because they were queer and they felt like they couldn't come out to anybody, for fuck's sake, find somebody that's queer and accept them, and just know that that's a thing you can change. You can help that for the next person. There's so many people I work with or know that work in death and dying or bereavement or grief support that have taken their grief and done something amazing with it. There's a woman here in Dayton who started a whole program called Grief to Hope for people who have lost their children, younger or adult. She lost her adult son. He was murdered. And she took that. She could have just disappeared into herself and beat herself up for the rest of her life for not being able to save her son. But she turned it into something amazing. So turn it into something good.
That's amazing advice. One thing that we constantly forget, just as humans, is we can't change the past. Period. The past is the past is the past is the past. And I know it's much easier said than done. And personally, as someone that's dealt with a lot of abuse and trauma and stuff like that, it's only been somewhat recently that I'm finally letting myself step away from all that and live my life. If someone has taken their own life or been murdered or just whatever reason is gone from your life in one way or another that you don't have any control over, use that situation to learn. Especially if you find out some things about the person that you didn't know, like if they're part of the queer community. Most people, not all people, but most people can grow and learn. And it's what you have to do. It's how we will survive as a species. It's by having empathy.
Yeah.
And as Nikki said, embrace someone else.
Yeah.
And get involved with community. Let people know that you're safe and can be trusted. And remember that trust is earned, not you don't just take it. So
yeah. Use it to honor them in some way. Like when you see so many people that will lose somebody to cancer and they form a team for a 5K that raises money for cancer. And that's great. Go to a pride march. Go to raise funds for mental health awareness. Like do something in their name, plant a tree. I don't know. Do something beautiful to honor their memory so that they are still alive in some way. They're not physically here, but you can keep their memory alive.
The pride thing's pretty big. It's something that we talked about in our pride episode a few episodes back. The free mom hugs, free dad hugs, that kind of thing.
That's what I do. I do the free mom hugs.
Yeah. Like I know there's some cishet people that are worried that it will offend people in our community. No. As long as you're genuine.
Yeah.
Because we will suss you out if you're not. But so many in the community have been ostracized by family. And sometimes we just need a fucking hug.
Yeah.
And having a stranger willing to be that vulnerable with us is a major thing. And it can turn someone's life around. It really can. Simple things can turn people's life around. Just in your day-to-day life. If you just make it a point to not be an asshole, to say thank you. Yeah.
Step one, don't be an asshole.
You would think it would be easy, but so many people struggle with it. But like, you don't have to go out of your way. Like, you don't need to buy someone the car behind you at Starbucks a coffee, which you shouldn't be doing anyways. Give that money as a tip to the baristas.
Right.
Okay. If someone is in drive-through to get a coffee at a coffee shop,
they can afford
that coffee. Yeah. Give that money to the people that are being berated by these assholes. Sorry, that was an aside. And we shouldn't be going to Starbucks anyways, but they sponsored the RNC, those fuckers.
I don't know. I don't like their coffee anyway, so I don't care.
Now that I live in downtown Massillon, there's a place here called Tremont Coffee. It's like a little local chain, and they're so fucking good. So
yeah.
That's my go-to.
Support your local places. I do that too.
Exactly. But yeah, just excuse me. Usually I mute myself. That came out quick. Treat people nice. Like, compliment a cashier in their hair or hold the door for somebody or just little things. Those little niceties. You could seriously save somebody's life without knowing it just by treating them with dignity throughout the day. So
just smiling at somebody could be what they needed that day.
I know I've been there, and I'm sure
too.
you have, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners and viewers have too. So it's It's hard, especially if you're having a rough day yourself too, but it's also a good way to turn your own day around by just kind of resetting yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you worked with many cases with families where there's a suicide to help them through that, or?
I have not. However, for 3-4 years, I was a volunteer at the suicide hotline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I also do grief coaching, and no, I don't think any of my clients lost anybody to suicide, but I've helped in support groups for that before. So I have at least spoken with people, but I haven't directly had a client. But yeah, I volunteered at the suicide hotline for a long time. So I learned a whole lot about suicide loss while I was there.
That's amazing.
That's hard work.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've utilized that myself. I think it's a couple of years ago. I texted them. And it helps.
Yeah.
And the amount of empathy that you have to do something like that, it had to be hard and draining, but then rewarding.
There is compassion fatigue is totally a thing. And mine kicked in about 40 minutes. If a call went on longer than 40 minutes, it was really, really hard for me to hold that compassion. And that sounds terrible, but I'm a human being too. Like anybody would tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, the calls that where we really genuinely helped somebody that called in was just like, they were really, on the metaphorical edge, so to speak, and just need somebody to talk them down for a second. Those calls would be relatively short and they felt great. You could tell, like, okay, they're okay, they're safe, they're going to go to their friend's house, whatever. It was all the other calls we got, the people that just would talk your ear off for 45 minutes about nothing, the prank calls, the poor, like, we would get the perv calls too. Like, who, what? We would get perv calls. I
never even considered that.
Oh, yeah, you could hear people whacking off, and it's like, dude, you called a suicide hotline to whack off? Real classy.
I never even thought of that. In prank calls too.
Oh yeah, people. Okay. I do have one quick story about that. So I worked midnight to 6 a.m. Friday into Saturday, so I was busy on those nights. And I had somebody call in that it sounded like a teenage girl who said, "My friend's here. She's going to kill herself." I said, "Okay." And I went through the whole process. I'm like, "What's going on? Is there a weapon in the room? Does she, whatever?" And they hung up, and I was like, shit. So, when they hang up, if you get their number, you can try to call it back. Nobody was answering. They call back again. And then they said something else about like, she's going to kill. And then I heard giggling, and I'm like, oh, this is a prank call. But you can't assume that right off the bat. So I was going through the motions, and I was like, is everything okay? Tell me about what's going on. What led you to this? And they hung up again. And I was pissed at that point because I'm like, I know this is a prank call. I kid you not, 10 minutes later, they called back and they apologized to me.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, we got off the phone and we couldn't believe how sweet and like caring you were. Like, you really gave a shit. I'm like, yeah, I thought you were going to hurt yourself. Yes, I'm here. That's what we do. And they were just so blown away by the fact that I cared enough to help talk them out of it that they wanted to apologize to me. I'm like, don't do that again. Like, thank you for apologizing. Don't fucking do that again, okay?
I'm hoping a lesson was learned there.
Yeah.
That day. That's...
Yeah. We're all idiots when we're teenagers. I made prank calls too, and I was an asshole when I was a teenager too, but I have since learned, so...
I definitely did prank calls, but I don't really... Even as weird as I am, I don't think I could have called the suicide hotline. Of course, I didn't even know it existed. If it did exist then, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess we should mention suicide hotlines, 988. You can call or text, or call or text.
Call or text, either one, yeah.
Yeah. And it helps. It sometimes just, as Nikki said, sometimes you're on a ledge and you can get talked down, but... Shit, in April with my own attempt, like, I was standing in the kitchen with a handful of pills for like 45 minutes, just staring at it. And all it took was just that one hand movement. And I managed to talk myself down, but it's that's not always possible.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. There's no stigma at all when it comes to calling it.
If you're calling that line, I promise you, the person that is answering, you're not bothering them. You're not offending them. And they do care, because we had, like, I went through a 10-week training process. It was insane the amount of training I had to go through for that. And they won't let somebody do this that's going to be rude or doesn't care. So, and that's the one thing I heard so much of, was I didn't want to be a bother. It's like, oh my God, that's literally why we're here. So don't think you're a bother. Don't think you're irritating anybody, and don't think you're offending them. Just call. For the love of Pete, call.
That's a very important message there too, about being a bother.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a feeling that I've had, and probably when you've had with ideation. And the entire point of the service is to help you. And they are there. Yeah, they're there to answer the phone or answer texts to talk to you. And you're not bothering them. So did you have to take like mandatory like breaks and stuff like that too, like for a few days to...
I'm trying to remember, because it's been a minute. We only ever worked one shift a week. You could sign up for more, but I don't know if they ever like capped you or said you couldn't do more. I'm honestly not sure. And who knows, each center might be different. But where I was, we were only not mandated, but we were required to work one shift a week. And that was it. And each shift was 3 to 6 hours. So you could work 3 hours a week, and that's fine.
That's a lot too.
Like, oh yeah.
That's not a job that I think anybody could or should be doing full time. So I think it would absolutely destroy you.
Oh Lord, yeah, I couldn't imagine. Like when you first come out of training, we had to do 6 hours a week, and for at least this first 6 months, just to make sure you really wanted to do it. And plus we were always short volunteers. We needed help so bad, and 6 hours a week was plenty. More than enough.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
You said it's a volunteer position, not paid, correct?
We did not get paid for that.
So that means that if people aren't getting paid for it, it means that they really actually want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise they wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
What does it take to get involved, to volunteer for that? Are there like, rules and regulations? I imagine that.
Screening. There's background checks. This was like 2016, I think, when I started volunteering there. But I know I had to go through a background check. I had to do 2 separate interviews, and then once I was accepted, I had to go through, like I said, it may have been 8 weeks. It was a very rigorous training program, and it was just one night a week, but it was like 3 hours. Every week for that whole time. And it was a lot of just learning about different types of mental illness, crisis de-escalation, policies and procedures. And every center might be different. I trained here in Columbus for the local hotline, but we also answered calls from the national hotline too. This was prior to 988, but there was the 888-273-TALK or help, or I forget. It's been so long. If you ever called that number, it would route you to the local center to the area code you were calling from, which was great in the beginning. But with cell phones, it
doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't
anymore,
mean much, because I would get calls from people in Texas. They just happen to have a 614 area code. But they try to get you to a local center, because we have resources for local hospitals, local places you can go to if you need.
Which makes sense. And plus, when you're talking to someone local, they also know the unique pressures of that particular area.
Exactly. I can't really identify with somebody in Phoenix who might be dealing with depression from the heat wave, or California, the Santa Ana winds. I hear that drives people to suicide a lot. So
really, I never heard that.
Yeah, I read it. I did an essay, or not an essay, a thesis in college on suicide awareness. And I was reading up on different factors of suicide. And there was a whole, tons of articles I found on people going a little crazy during the Santa Ana winds. And I know it's interesting. And yeah, weather can do a lot, man. It can really play, like people who live in areas that don't get a lot of sun, they get more depressed. Yeah, right? Hi.
Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't realize. Like everyone thinks like Seattle when it comes to
Seattle gets more sun than Ohio does.
Yeah, like Seattle and Northeast Ohio, like we bounce back and forth for being the gloomiest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why there's a giant military base in Ravenna, because there's so much cloud cover. But we got some deep stuff here.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to yammer about while you're here?
So the only other hill I have to die on is telling people to fill out their advance directive paperwork.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Please, if you do nothing else, fill out a living will. And your living will is that's your advance directive. That is the, if I'm in a permanent vegetative state, no hope of cure or waking up, what do I want to be artificially kept alive, or do I want you to let me go? Fill that out. Because if they don't know, they don't know. And they might keep you alive artificially for years. And oh my God, that's awful for you. That's awful for your family and very expensive.
Everybody.
Yeah, it's just, there's very little good. And yeah, there are stories of people that are in comas for 20 years and they wake up, but they're never really the same. You know, when you're in a coma.
Yeah, there's a little time skip there too.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, if nothing else, fill out a living will for the love of God.
Yeah, I have one that I did through LegalZoom. I need to go back and like fully update it. It's like $50 or something like that. It's not too much.
You can, and you can do them
free
for
services.
Yeah,
too.
You can do them for free. Like in Ohio, I can give you the link if you want to put it in your in your show notes. There's a link. It's through, I think it's through Ohio Health, but they have all of the documents. They have living will, living will, power of attorney, financial and medical, guardianship, DNR, all of that in one packet, and it has questions and like FAQs on which ones you need and when. And all you have to do is fill them out and have them notarized. That's it. Then they're legally binding. That said, if they're sitting in a drawer somewhere, that's not going to help you. So make sure somebody has copies of them.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
In the queer community, there's a fair number of us that don't really have many people we're close to. Mm-hmm. And it can be kind of a lonely existence. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest people do with those documents to make them accessible for people? So,
first, before that, as far like medical power of attorney is different than a living will. That's where you have somebody you would appoint to make decisions on your behalf if you're not able to. So that's not necessarily you're in a coma forever, you're not going to wake up. This might just be you're in surgery, something happened, whatever. There's some reason you can't make medical decisions. They can do that for you. Pick somebody you trust. If you don't have one of those, and this is so important for people in the queer community who might be estranged from their family, they will go to next of kin. And if you don't trust your next of kin, or they don't align with your beliefs, they won't make the decisions you might want. So make sure you have picked somebody you trust. And this can be a friend, it can be a neighbor. Just make sure they're okay with it too, because they have to sign the document as well. But once you have those forms, I know in Ohio, if you have an online MyChart portal, which I think every state has their own version of a MyChart. It's through Epic. There's a place you can upload it, so your doctor's office will have it.
I should do that.
Yes. I have it on.
That's really good advice.
I have MyChart for OSU and Ohio Health and Central Ohio Primary Care, and I've uploaded it to all three places. You can give a copy to your doctor physically, like take a copy and give it to your doctor next time you go in. Say, put this in my file. So they'll have that as well.
That's good advice. Definitely good advice. And while you were talking, an idea popped in my head of even just having a little coalition of local people, local queer people, local just whatever. And it sounds fucked up, but have a will buddy, essentially.
Yeah, that's not fucked up at all. No, I think that's a wonderful idea. As long as you trust that person, you know they'll make the decisions you want, then there's nothing. I tell people I have a workbook on my website for people who may not have family left or who are estranged from their family. How do I plan for my end of life? And I encourage you to dig deep. Like maybe if you're a part of an organization, is there somebody within that it doesn't have to be a church, or maybe if it's a religious organization, that's a great place to look. But a local chapter of, like in Columbus, we have Stonewall Columbus, and there's great organizations there that help people in the queer community. There might be somebody there that's willing to do that. Put an ad on Craigslist. Don't put an ad on Craigslist. I'm kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just, if there's really genuinely nobody in your life, we'll find somebody for you. Ask around. There is a Facebook group that I'm part of called Stand with Pride in the Midwest. And I know they have Stand with Pride in other areas of the country too, where people can reach out to look for, surrogate family members. Like, I'm getting married and I want somebody to walk me down the aisle who will be my dad. And people will volunteer. I will walk you down the aisle. They'll ask people to show up at their graduation. It's like, so there are people out there that will do that for you.
And that kind of stuff really, helps give faith in humanity, especially like with us being especially lately, just being bombarded by so much bad news and fucked up politics and, the for-profit news cycle and everything. So it's nice to hear stories of people like that to show, overall humans aren't that terrible. As much as I like to say humans are terrible.
If I find myself on Facebook getting real pissed off, I scroll over to my groups and I go find Stand with Pride in Midwest, and I just read through posts and comments and I feel good again. There are people out there that give a shit.
There are. And remember, if you're starting to get into like an argument with someone on Facebook or any social media, just don't. There's no point. There's no point. There's no winning. Yeah. And if I don't respond when people post critical stuff on things I post. Sometimes I'll just delete the post. Like I did that the other day with Richard Simmons died the same day that Trump got shot.
Yeah, I know.
And so I'm like, in what universe is it? Something along the lines of, what universe is it fair that Richard was taken from us, but the Orange Menace just got his ear clipped, and a bunch of local realtors that never interact with me at all jumped on, like, that's tacky, that's a horrible thing to say, this, that, and the other. I'm like, this fucker goes in front of people and talks about how he wants to eradicate people like me, So
what's tacky is they didn't have the same response to children being shot in schools.
Exactly.
So,
over and over again. So, but I'm just like, you know what? I don't even want this, and frankly, as a business decision, I deleted it. But don't engage is what I'm trying to say. It also takes away people's power that they think that they might have, because no one has power on the internet. Once you're in person, we're all just people, just trying to.
We're all fumbling around here on this blue marble.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I've missed this in the past couple episodes because, one, I don't know why I forgot to do it with Sarah last week, probably just because I'm flaky. And the week before that, ran long with Chloe. So, we weren't able to do it. But I want to bring back Cards Against Humanity. So, this is the old school Cards Against Humanity, like the original deck kind, essentially. So, there's no modifications to this at all. I'm just kind of going through and just loosely shuffling. And the rule to this game, Nikki's excited.
I'm so excited.
She's like bouncing up and down. The rules are, you pick a card and we have to come up with something to respond to it. So it's only black cards, not the white cards.
Okay.
But because Cards Against Humanity usually isn't a two-person game.
Right.
But I remember I don't know if you can still do it or not, but there used to be like an online like text-based version that you could play with. Like I played with my Warcraft friends.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
Holy shit. The girls that we were playing with were fucking raunchy. It was amazing. it was the best thing ever. So anyways, so Nikki.
Okay, I'm ready.
Here's the deck. Tell me like approximately where in the deck you want to pull a card from.
Right there.
Right here or in like this?
Yeah, right there. That's fine.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one.
So this is going to be your card.
Okay.
And I am going to pull one at random. So this is my card.
Okay.
So are you ready for your stuff
I'm ready.
and things?
I'm ready.
Okay. I don't know how I was going to focus on this. It says, this is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but with...
Okay, hold on. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but with glitter. With glitter.
That's a good fucking answer. Can you imagine? I mean, enough glitter would just destroy the world. I mean, people use them as those glitter... Have you seen those glitter bomb pranks?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are amazing. So, good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
You're welcome. You could say confetti cannon too, but I like glitter.
Glitter's better.
And glitter's
because it's so hard to clean up. It's impossible to clean up.
It's the
going to be
herpes
everywhere.
of craft supplies. It's true. It never goes away.
If this episode weren't about death and stuff, I would title it "It's the Herpes of Craft Supplies." But yeah, because that's a quote. That's definitely a quote. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping a little clip generator from Riverside grabs onto that and be
Fix that one.
Exactly.
Fingers crossed.
But
Fingers crossed.
you never know what it's going to do. Okay, so mine, blank, kid tested, mother approved.
Okay.
I mean, there are so many things. And it's just how raunchy do we go? Yours was fairly clean. But as a lesbian, I'm just going to say titties. Kid tested, mother approved, because I'm a mom and I do love some titties, both my own and those of other people. So
that's because titties are fantastic.
Titties, everybody loves titties.
Everybody loves
titties.
My cat loves titties.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, cats look nagging on them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, not everybody loves titties on themselves. Like, I'm looking at, like, trans-masc individuals and stuff like that.
True.
But the trans-masc people I've talked to still love titties, just on somebody else. So
100%.
Yeah. I'm so happy that I've grown my own there. It's, just looking at myself in the mirror, just laying there. I'm like, ooh, boobs.
Boobs. Oh, yeah.
Titties are the best.
They're great.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything anything else that you want to get out there to my 90 listeners?
It's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to be okay. Like, that's the lesson we learned from when you were on my episode. As far as death, loss, and grief, whatever you're going to feel is okay, valid, and normal. So don't... There's so many people who think they're grieving wrong. You're not. However you're doing it is exactly right. Just don't hurt anybody else in the process. Whatever you're going to feel is... I always end my every episode with, your grief is yours, your feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck. So take it with that. That's
an amazing advice. And as alone as anyone feels in their grief, I guarantee you
somebody else
they're
has
not
felt
the only
it.
one that feels that way.
Somebody else has felt it, thought it, said it. You're never really truly alone in your grief. It's isolating. Grief is isolating, but you're never alone. It is
isolating. But if you can find the strength within you to talk to somebody, and you don't have to either. There's no shame in not talking to somebody. But if you can, you might find some commonalities. And, like, I just know, just when I was on your podcast, just kind of unloading about my dad, especially the first time that we talked before that, like, it's nice to get all that out there. Like, not a lot of people knew those things about me beyond like my therapist and like my son's other mother. So just getting it out there, getting it off your chest, putting words to it can help a lot.
So much. So much.
Nikki.
Yes.
It was a pleasure having you on the show.
This was fun.
And it was. And thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for having me on yours.
Yeah.
And I kind of give people a preview of this because I ran your ad on last week's.
Yay!
Yeah, I ran it another time too, but but definitely people go check out Good Grief.
Yeah, thank you.
Nikki's a wonderful person, and I'm honored to get to know her, and she's not too far from me either. So we're gonna have to get a coffee.
Yes.
I need a trip to Columbus. So plus my cousins are there too, and they're always trying to get me to come down. So
yeah, if you're ever down
next
here,
week,
let me know.
I shall. Next week on Transcending Humanity, let's see, who do we have? Next week is Samantha Tano. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her last name. And the return of Erica Vogel. Samantha is a published author. Recently has a book that just came out. And Erica is a frequent co-host on this show. She has her own book coming out. So I'm probably just going to sit in the background of that episode and let those two just yammer on about writing and stuff. And hopefully learn some lessons myself because I want to start my own book. And the week after that, I have someone lined up. I hope it works out. He's a YouTuber. So, it'd be fun. Thanks again for joining us. And Nikki, thank you again. I know I said this already, but, and we will see you next time on Transcending Humanity. Doodles. Record button. There it is.